Jakob Glesnes is going to oh my God! What a goal!
And that will do it! One of the best comebacks in recent years. 3 unanswered by the Union. And they go into the Gold Cup break, winning it 3-2.
Hello and welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd. And yeah, I mean, what a disappointing game it was this weekend for the Philadelphia Union. But, all in all, I had a terrific weekend in Cincinnati. I'll go ahead and talk about my experience. I feel like my experience made up for the disappointing display we saw Saturday night from the Philadelphia Union. Feeling 10 times better. Not positive anymore for COVID, thank goodness. Not fun. So, yeah, hopefully we can start knocking out these podcasts again weekly, 2 episodes a week. Hopefully we can get commentators back on the podcast. But, yeah, really looking forward to this episode, just talking about a whole bunch of news. Talking about that game in Cincinnati. I feel like I always have a lot more to say when the Union lose than when the Union win, which we all know has only happened now 3 times this season that the Union have lost. But still, there is a lot to be said. Not a ton of positives, but really looking forward to just talking about this game, all this news. Blunder of the week, 3 stars, breaking down the goals, all that jazz. But without further ado, let's just get straight into the news. All right, so I know I've been putting it off the last couple of weeks, talking about New York City and Taty Castellanos. As we all know by now, New York City, they've loaned Taty Castellanos to newly promoted La Liga side Giorona FC through June of 2023. That keeps Taty Castellanos in the City Footballing Group family. And it's so wild to me, right? Where we have a player like Taty, and I think as Union fans, we know Taty's the best striker in MLS, was the best striker in MLS. And it's crazy to me that some team in the world wouldn't pay $15 million to New York City for Taty. I mean, watching him win the Golden Boot last year, continuing to score this season for New York City. And now with Giorona, I know La Liga hasn't started yet, but I think Taty has 3 or 4 goals so far in preseason with them. And that's just typical Taty, right? I know it took him a little bit to get used to the physicality of MLS, kind of come into his own and become the player that we all know now. But to see him go to a new club and just continuing that form, and I think that's going to help Taty so much in just this upcoming season in La Liga is he's already through half the season with MLS. He's already in mid-season form, and all these guys are coming into preseason and getting into preseason shape, where you have a player in Taty Castellanos who's already in shape, who's already in mid-season form. And so hopefully, I know it's preseason, but hopefully for New York City's sake, for MLS's sake, Taty Castellanos can continue to score in La Liga in Europe. But it is crazy to me that no team took the chance to sign Taty for $15 million. Yeah, it's a ton of money for a team to pay for an MLS player, but I look at Adam Busca, who's 2 years older than Taty, stayed in MLS a lot shorter than what Taty did, had worse stats than Taty did, but yet Adam Busca still got sold to Ligue 1 for $10 million. I look at Ricardo Pepe, who only had 1 full season with FC Dallas. He gets sold for a ton of money, close to $20 million, something like that, with all the incentives. And now in Augsburg, he's not even being played as a striker. They're playing him out on the wing. I mean, it's crazy how these 2 players didn't have the type of season that Taty Castellanos has had for New York City. But no team comes in and says, yeah, we don't want to give you $15 million for him. You see all these rumors of Leeds, of Bournemouth, of Palmeiras in Brazil, so many other clubs around the world that were apparently interested in Taty, but nobody offered $15 million, and New York City weren't letting him go for anything less than that. And I get the argument, right? Where the reason Ricardo Pepe went for so much more money than what New York City weren't getting for Taty was because Pepe's 18 years old. The future is a lot brighter for him. He's already getting senior call ups to the USMT. You have Adam Buska, who's already played in Europe, who's already getting call ups for Poland's national team. But Taty's not been called up at all for Argentina's national team. And I think part of that plays into why New York City weren't able to get $15 million for him. But still, you have a player where he's a proven goal scorer. And yeah, we can argue and say, oh, yeah, he is only good because he plays at Yankee Stadium. But no, he's scoring goals all over. It's not just at Yankee Stadium. He was the best striker in MLS. And for New York City, only able to get a loan for him, it's just really crazy to me. And I know New York City are taking a huge risk because if Taty tears up La Liga, if he performs as well as they think he's going to do, then that $15 million price tag that they had set on him is going to be doubled, is going to be potentially tripled, because we know teams in Europe are crazy for strikers. If you can find a proven goal scorer, teams aren't afraid to spend $40+ million on a striker. And so with Taty being 23 years old, going on 24, that's still young. And now he's finally getting a chance at European football. Granted, it's maybe not the most sexiest club in Europe, but regardless, it's a top 5 league in Europe. He's going to be playing against the likes of Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, Real Madrid, top clubs. And if he plays well against them, you best believe teams are going to have their eyes on him. I think Taty Castellanos would be the perfect signing for a club like Atletico Madrid, where Taty is not afraid to do the defensive work. He's not afraid to grind it out and then goals come his way, because I feel like that's what a lot of his game was in New York City. And so I think if Taty just continues to be Taty in Europe, then that $15 million that teams didn't want to offer New York City, well, now they're going to be kicking themselves where, now they're going to have to pay double or triple, like I said, for a player that's still young, who, has got off to a good scoring streak so far in preseason with Giorona. But yeah, it's just preseason, but I don't know. I have every confidence that Taty is going to tear up La Liga. And I guess if Taty doesn't pan out for this club in La Liga, if he doesn't do well in Europe, well, New York City get a player back that is good in MLS. They get the best striker back. And yeah, maybe he blows his one and only chance in Europe if he doesn't play well on loan. But, there is high risk that New York City are going to get a ton of money for Taty Castellanos. So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of positives. There's a lot of negatives. But I don't know. It's just wild to me that, like I said, you see a player like Ricardo Pepe or Adam Buska go for a ton of money, and New York City can't get $15 million for Taty. But regardless, let's go on and talk about the 2 bits of news that the Union made last week. And that was the Union announcing the signing of 21-year-old Richard Odada from Red Star Belgrade on a 2.5-year contract with a club option for the 3rd and 4th year in exchange for an undisclosed transfer fee. Now, I saw reports out there that said the Union paid about $200,000, which isn't a ton of money. It's a lot cheaper than what they spent to get Matai Orvats out of Europe, so a player that never even played. So I think this is zero risk for the Union. He has 5 call-ups for Kenyan's national team. He scored against Rwanda in a game for Kenya. He's made 2 appearances for Red Star Belgrade. He spent time on loan at multiple clubs in Serbia. So, I mean, yeah, there's a ton of unknowns. This guy is listed as a defensive midfielder. Ernst Tanner and Jim Curtin both said that he's a versatile player. He can play in the diamond. I believe Jim said last week in his press conference that Richard has played on the left side of the diamond. Don't quote me. It's been a while. But yeah, he's definitely played in a diamond formation, Jim said. And he can also play as a center back. I mean, this guy is huge. This is a player that the Union are taking a huge risk on. And I know some friends are like, oh, great. Well, what's this mean for Jose Martinez? Is Jose Martinez going to leave? Is he going to get sold? And Ernst said, now these two signings that we made were more so for next season and not this season. Where you look at Richard, he's 6'3", 180 pounds. This guy is just a tank. He is massive. I've seen a lot of comparisons to Victor Wanyama, formerly of Tottenham, now with Montreal Impact, we all know. And if Richard can be as good as Victor was, wow, the Philadelphia Union are getting a terrific player. I mean, 180 pounds, 6'3", as a center defensive fielder. That I mean, you just don't see that. Like, that screams center back to me. But apparently, Ernst and Jim really want to play him as the number 6. Yes, he's versatile, so he can play in multiple positions. And I know I've talked about it before in the podcast where, yeah, I think it's great when the Union are signing players that can play in multiple different positions that are versatile. And that's just going to help the Union going forward, just change things up formation-wise if they need to, if they're behind in a game, if they need to change it against a certain opponent. So I think that's a really good signing that the Union made right there. And then you go ahead and look, they signed an 18-year-old center back that is an even lesser known player than what Richard Odada was, Abasa Aremeyaw. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that name correctly. The Union did not give a pronunciation guide on how to say either one of these players' names, but Abasa signed on a 2.5-year contract with a club option for the 3rd and 4th year. He has playing experience in Slovakia, just like Matai Orvac. And the reason the Union, well, I guess specifically Ernst Tanner had an eye on Abasa was because he was playing in the UEFA U19 Youth League competition for MSK Zalina, their B squad, and he made it all the way to the round of 16, falling to RB Salzburg's U19 team in penalty kicks. And yeah, he's not playing for the first team, he's playing for a second team, but still, you're playing in a European competition against another team, especially the club that Ernst Tanner came from. You know he has all these connections still with Red Bulls. To see Ambassa playing every single minute, playing a huge role apparently to get his club to the round of 16 in this competition. I mean, this is a player that's unknown, and I'm not going to talk like, oh, yeah, I know so much about this guy. I don't know anything about this guy other than what Ernst Tanner said, which he said he's a promising young player who has physical skills that they want to develop into a contributor into their back line. He said that he's really dominant on set plays. He has really good speed and agility, and Ernst Tanner thinks that's going to be a good fit for the Union defensively. So, I mean, there's a player where the Union takes zero risk. Don't pay a transfer fee. A player that's from Ghana that went to play in Slovakia, and now he's coming to America. Yeah, it's going to be hard to, break up the Glesnes Elliott center back partnership just because they were playing so well. But this guy's 18 years old, and if this guy doesn't play for a couple of seasons, then I don't think we can call this a bust. Because look at Olivier Bizo. I think he was in the Union system since 2017, maybe 2018. And it was only recently that Bizo finally started to get a chance with the first team. We're definitely going to see Abasa get a ton of chances with U2s, just like we saw Bizo get with Bethlehem Steel when they were in USL. So both of these moves, I don't think they're going to move the needle to help the Union win MLS Cup this season, win the Supporters Shield. But the two signings that could potentially be huge pieces for the Union in the future. So, happy to see the Union come up with two signings. Looking forward to the Union not having to, sweat it out, try to get players in January where teams typically don't want to sell because they're halfway through their season while MLS is just about to start their season. So, to see the Union go ahead and sign two players on deadline day, it was a fantastic piece of business from the Union. And speaking of deadline day, there was a ton of moves made by MLS clubs. I'm not going to go ahead and talk about each individual player. I'll announce some of the moves that were made on deadline day, like Christian Benteke to DC United, formerly of Crystal Palace, Liverpool, Aston Villa, Belgium national team player. You have Dennis Boanga go to LAFC from Saint Etienne in Ligue 1. I think I saw the fee go for like $5 million. You had Tajori Shradi move from LAFC to New England. We saw Sebastian Lletget move from New England to Dallas. We saw Kyle Duncan come back into MLS, coming on loan from his club in Belgium, rejoining New York Red Bulls. We saw Matt Mazaga finally leave Chelsea and all the clubs that he was on loan with in Europe get announced as a signing for FC Cincinnati. Richie Laria is coming back on loan to Toronto from Nottingham Forest because he wants to get playing time for the World Cup. And so Toronto could definitely use a right back. They get a player that was huge for them the last couple of seasons. That's a huge signing for them. We saw Brian Oviedo, the Costa Rican international left back, join Real Salt Lake. We saw Nuno Santos join Charlotte from Benfica, 23-year-old midfielder. We saw Adelson Malanda also join Charlotte, a center back. I believe he's 20 years old. We saw Jonathan Gonzalez join Minnesota from Monterrey on loan. And then maybe the biggest signing on deadline day was Ricky Puig from Barcelona to LA Galaxy. And the reason I bring up just all these moves is because one of my buddies, they were in America a few weeks ago, and they were asking what they should do in the time here. And I said, oh, well, you guys are in Nashville. Go ahead and check out a Nashville game. And they were playing Portland. And my buddy and his friend, they told me, they were like, yeah, this is worse than the championship. This is the equivalent to the third division in England. And I'm thinking to myself, no, MLS isn't like, and this is what I hate about Europeans, about your Euro snobs, where they won't look at MLS. They're so biased to their leagues, where they don't give MLS the credit that it deserves. People are stuck in this mindset where, oh, MLS is a retirement league. Yeah, I mean, one of those players I just announced, Christian Benteke, is, I guess you can consider a retirement player. I think he's 33, 34 years old. Not a great striker whatsoever. But all these other players I just announced to you guys are young players that are in their prime or young players that haven't even hit their prime yet. And we all know, as fans of MLS, that this is the way that MLS is going. They're not going and signing all these over-the-moon players that we've seen over the years. MLS is getting younger and younger. And it does bother me when, my friend's like, yeah, the soccer here is not that good. He's like, yeah, it's fun. It's entertaining. It's just not that good. The technical ability's not there. They're not good defensively. And the way I look at it is we see mistakes all the time in the Premier League, in La Liga, in the Bundesliga. Like, there is no perfect soccer played in the world. But as soon as a defender makes a mistake, as soon as a goalkeeper makes a mistake in MLS, then MLS gets labeled as such. But if it happens in any of those other leagues in Europe, it's not talked about. It's like brushed under the rug and, oh no, that never happens in our league. Or then the excuses come out like, oh, they're just a bad team. Well, why can't MLS fans make the same excuse and say, oh, that's a bad team? Like that game you just watched, that's not one of the good teams in MLS. Of course, every single league is going to have bad teams. And I think it's funny too, when two of my buddies in England, I sent them the score of the Minnesota United versus Everton game, and they didn't want to talk about it at all. And I'm like, it's not like Everton came out here and they didn't start their regular starters. They played regular starters. They got absolutely destroyed by Minnesota's first and second team. But yeah, we don't want to talk about that. Or if you do want to talk about it, oh yeah, they're one of the bad teams. Frank Lampard is not a good manager, which you're right, he's not. Or what about the Charlotte versus Chelsea game? Don't want to talk about that. It's like, people are just so caught up and want to live in the past that MLS is this retirement league. But here's MLS signing all these players I just told you that are in their prime, most of them that are coming from huge clubs in Europe that want to come into MLS. And we see Gareth Bale going to LAFC. Could have made so much more money if he would have stayed in Europe, but he wanted to come to MLS and experience MLS to play week in, week out. And I'm sure part of the reasoning why Gareth Bale came here was to, scout some of the center backs that are going to play for the USMT in Qatar. As we all know, Wales and the USMT are in the same group. But I'm just so sick and tired of it, where people don't know what they're talking about, just constantly saying that, oh, MLS is this, MLS is that. Oh, it's not a good league. It's the equivalent to the third or fourth division in England. This isn't good soccer. The players aren't good. It's entertaining. Like, just stop with it already. Like, just say, yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just going with what I see on social media. Like, it drives me crazy. Like, people ask me all the time, they're like, oh, what do you think of blah, blah, blah coming from Serie A or La Liga? And I'll say, I don't know. I mean, I know the player's name, but I don't watch these leagues week in, week out. And I'm not going to talk about a league, a player, a team that I don't pay that close enough attention to. But yet you have these Euro snobs. You have these people in Europe that talk about MLS like they watch it week in, week out. Like, no, you don't. And I guess that in itself could be blunder of the week for this episode. But yeah, I'm just really tired of the stigma that fans that don't pay attention to the league week in, week out think that they know MLS. Like, get out of here with that. But let's go ahead and talk about the FC Cincinnati versus Philadelphia Union game. But before we talk about that game, like I said in the intro, spent the weekend in Cincinnati. And I just want to talk about my experience here for a little bit. And it was an absolute fantastic trip, regardless of the scoreline, like I said in the intro. The weather was perfect. It wasn't too hot, wasn't cold at all. Rain when we landed on Friday, but as the day went on, the rain let up and it stayed overcast, which is fine by me. The weather was good. Didn't have any rain at all. We thought we were going to get rained on Saturday, but just had a couple of light drizzles here or there. But yeah, it wasn't humid like it is here on the East Coast, which was my first takeaway. Like, recording this podcast on Monday, August 8th, and I went outside for a walk, and I'm like, oh my God, it's so humid out. And when the sun did come out in Cincinnati, it didn't feel this humid out like it does here on the East Coast. It's like, you can tell the difference. And I'm sure part of that is the elevation, how high up Cincinnati is compared to being down here on the East Coast. But yeah, that was like my first takeaway. I will say, though, I thought the city was super easy to navigate. But the only thing I'll say about that is if you guys ever visit Cincinnati, which I highly recommend, you definitely should, always remember to be in the left lane, because when you're in the city, cars park in the right lane. And so you're always going to have to merge left because cars are just parked in the middle of the street. But other than that, yeah, it was super easy to navigate. The Cincinnati Zoo was amazing, which we spent 6 hours there, my sister and I, which is really saying something because I'm not a huge zoo person. I like aquariums better, which I guess is no surprise to some of you guys since I like fishing. But yeah, it was really, really cool seeing, I think, over 60 animals they had. The zoo was easy to navigate. The reptile house they had there, I think I saw that there was like the third oldest building for a zoo in the United States. It's the original building from 1875. Yeah, no, obviously the animals they have in there aren't from 1875, but the building itself. And it was just really cool just seeing a lot of these animals. I wasn't really impressed by too many of the animals because a lot of the animals they had there were the same animals I've seen in Animal Kingdom in Disney World. But I would say probably my favorite animals that I saw there were the king penguins that they had. They had so many different penguins. Watching the penguins swim, And I guess it just goes back again to me liking aquariums better, watching animals in the water. But yeah, I mean, the zoo was fantastic. Definitely check that out if you guys plan on going to Cincinnati. I know the next time, whenever I go to Cincinnati, people said check out the aquarium, do the baseball tour at the Red Stadium. So those are kind of things that I have on my list next time to check out when I'm in Cincinnati. I got to give a huge shout out though to Jarrett Nisley and his fiance Erica. We met up with those guys at this soccer bar called The Pitch, and it was a really cool experience where this sports bar was literally right across TQL Stadium. It had a rooftop bar, had a great view of TQL Stadium, watching all the fans just walk to the stadium. The food wasn't super expensive there. They had a food truck. They had beer, obviously. None of that stuff was super expensive, which, you're not sure what you're going to get when you go to these sports bars. They had a ton of TVs on, showing different soccer games. I know when Jaron and I were in there, and they had on the MLS game between Atlanta United and Seattle. And so everybody's paying attention to this game against Seattle. And as soon as Andrew Gutman scored, like, people were upset, but people were happy for Andrew Gutman as he used to play for FC Cincinnati. But yeah, I mean, just really great atmosphere talking to the fans of Cincinnati. None of them gave us any issues. We had one guy come up to my sister and I. He's like, "Oh, Philly, really?" And I was like, "Well, you guys are Philly 2.0." And he's like, "Yeah, you got a good point," and just like laughed it off, walked away. And I was like, "Yeah, of course. Like, you guys are having a successful season because of the people you've taken away from the Union. Like, don't give us crap for wearing Union jerseys." And then inside the stadium, I mean, people were just so thankful that we came to the stadium to take in the game. Just again, just really nice and welcoming. And I can see why, honestly, the U.S. national team plays there. Stadium holds 26,000 fans, I believe it is. I don't know if that's including standing room or not. I think it's 26,000 seats. Definitely not including standing room. And then, I mean, there's honestly not a bad seat in the house. Like, they had us all the way at the very top of the stadium behind the scoreboard. We were literally the last row of the stadium. Definitely wasn't as high up climbing up DC United Stadium. I definitely had to climb up a few set of steps. But yeah, I mean, the view was really good. You could see both goals easily when there was going to be a goal. You could see, how the teams were lined up, all this stuff that I like. And I guess the only issue we had was the Cincinnati fans that we were seated around. One, they didn't give us any security. Two, they didn't block off Cincinnati fans from sitting in the same row as us, which I've never seen that happen at Subaru Park or any other stadium that I went to in MLS. Like, in Atlanta, when I went, they left a whole row empty behind us, had security guards behind us. When I went down to DC, they had security all around us. Here in Cincinnati, no security. They had Cincinnati fans sitting in the same row as us, and some of the Cincinnati fans were getting angry with us chanting, making noise and everything. We're like, sorry, this is the away supporters section. This is where your stadium sat us. And that's where away teams always get sent, is in the family sections, always the highest part of the stadium. And so I'm just confused why, like, they were so mad at us chanting and everything, where it's like, yeah, we're supporting our team. If you don't like it, then I don't know what to tell you. I guess get mad at your team. But yeah, all in all, just a terrific time at the game. The atmosphere was great inside the stadium. Prices were definitely, equivalent to what you would pay, I feel like, at a baseball stadium, football stadium. Definitely not Subaru Park prices. Subaru Park pricing has definitely been the highest that I've seen in any soccer stadium that I went to this season. But yeah, the prices were definitely a lot more comfortable than what I felt like paying at Subaru Park. And I guess the one thing that I don't understand is, why they're not selling out every single game. You have a good product. You have good coaches. You have a good team. You have good players. It's like, why aren't you guys going to these games? It was really, really efficient, the traffic patterns to get you in and out of the stadium. You didn't have to wait in traffic at all, which is a shock, where we all have to wait in traffic at Subaru Park. But yeah, just all in all, a really great time in Cincinnati, at the game, at the zoo. And I guess one more thing I want to add about the zoo was when my sister and I was there, we saw a ton of fans wearing Cincinnati jerseys, which is really cool to see. And I feel like, yeah, I've heard some people say, yeah, you see Union jerseys more in Philadelphia than you have in the past. But I know here where I live in Maryland, I don't see any DC United jerseys whatsoever. And I guess, granted, it's because I live like an hour away from DC. Maybe fans don't want to support DC United. But regardless, like, even when I'm in Baltimore, I still don't see like people wearing DC United jerseys. So, regardless, just a really fantastic trip, a trip that I would definitely take again someday. I don't know when, but I highly recommend it to people that are thinking about going to an away game. I think Cincinnati should definitely be high up on your list, especially when the stadium's only a year old. But let's go ahead and talk about this game, which was totally uncharacteristic by the Union. I think overall, Cincinnati were well organized, really made it difficult for the Union to break them down. But especially when you look in the first 20 minutes, the Union just couldn't do anything offensively. Cincinnati had the Union push back in their own half, where Flock, Martinez, and Bedoya were working extremely hard to win the ball back. And when the Union would win the ball back, they couldn't complete any passes because of the press that Cincinnati was bringing. You had Bizer make a huge last-minute tackle in the 14th minute against Acosta. And just like I said in my match preview, if you guys read that over the weekend, I said Cincinnati, they're going to get Acosta on the ball as much as possible, especially in the 18-yard box. And like we've seen in the past, like we've seen this season, he's such a creative player, so shifty. And you're seeing this season the Acosta from 2018, 2019, when he was with DC United. I mean, he's just having an MVP type season for Cincinnati. And Cincinnati, they were getting a ton from Alvis Powell in advanced positioning in the first half, more than Alvaro Barrial. But every time that Alvis Powell would get to the right side of the 18-yard box, the Union were forcing him to pass backwards. Wagner had that angle covered, so Powell couldn't get a good cross in. You had Elliott and Glesnes defending their 6-yard box really well. And right away, that's a win for the Union. You thought, okay, well, if the Union are doing this within the first 20, 25 minutes of the game, then this is going to be a good game defensively from the Union, like we've seen throughout the season, all season long. But the Union, right after, Bizer makes a tackle, I feel like 10 minutes afterwards, Brenner gets a goal in the first half, gets called back because of a handball. But, even then, I thought that play shouldn't have happened because Julian Carranza was fouled in the build-up to that goal, and the referee did nothing about it. The Union got caught being disorganized on that play, and, yeah, just fortunate for them, the referee went to VAR and called a handball, and the Union were able to leave the half tied 0-0. But yeah, offensively in the first half, the Union just seemed really disjointed. Couldn't get anything going. And Liam Flock worked his butt off defensively, winning 5 out of 5 tackles. He had the best passing accuracy out of every Union player in the first half, with completing 13 out of 15 passes, which, a lot of fans, myself included, have complained about Leon's passing in the past. But he looked good there in the first half. He was playing really good entry balls into Mikau Ua. Had a good cutback to Julian Carranza there. But Cincinnati did a good job to clear that ball out. But yeah, just the first half couldn't get anything going defensively. And of course, in the second half, once Cincinnati goes up a goal, they're going to sit back a little bit deeper and send in a low block, really make it difficult for the Union to break them down. But look, not good enough from the Union in the first half offensively. And this is what Jim Curtin had to say.
Yeah, we said it at halftime. We played too many balls in the air. We didn't win any of them, So credit again, Cincinnati won everything against our strikers, so it would come down right back down our throat. We talked at halftime about playing on the floor more. combining a little bit, getting rid of the one-touch flicks, and we still just weren't clean enough on that. We didn't secure the ball, play the next guy enough times. We tried a little bit of, fancy blind passes or flicks and tricks, and that doesn't work on the road against a team that was tough and organized. So again, still had chances in the game, still created some things, but it wasn't our sharpest all around. When we have a night where everybody's not at least good, we're going to get beat. And that's happened only 3 times in 24 games this year, but we got punished. So I think all phases of the game, from the coach, from the defenders to the midfielders to the forwards, we all know we need to play better, and we all have to be good to get results. Otherwise, if we try to do things individually, it becomes a little bit harder for us.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the good thing is we know when the Union have a bad game, they get it out of their system, and then they come back firing on all cylinders in the next couple games. So hopefully that trend continues to be the case for the Union. But, I talked about it in my blog over the weekend that the Union were trying to create history Saturday night against Cincinnati. The Union were trying to go for 6 wins in a row, something they've never done. And they were trying to tie their wins record on the road with 6, which they set in 2018 and 2019. And winning's hard in this league, and especially on the road, which is why it's been so surprising to see the Union play so well on the road this season. Up until this point, they'd only lost 1 game on the road, and now they go to Cincinnati and lose 2, but still to go on the road and only lose 2 games of the season, especially where you look where we are now, it's been really, really impressive from the Union. And then the second half of this game, I thought the Union, they just came out with no energy to start the half. Cincinnati took their first shot and scored in the second half with Vasquez. The second shot they took, goal with Brenner. And it's just a huge credit to Cincinnati for being so clinical. They've got great forwards, and like Jim said, 2 completely different types of forwards compared to what teams run. Both strikers have great movement in the box, and you saw their finishing ability. Both strikers draw double teams. They're just really, really good strikers. They complement each other so well. And Julian and Daniel Gazdag, they both had chances in this game to make it 2-1 at one point. And I think if that would have happened, then I think we would have seen a totally different game. I thought if the Union could have got that first goal and cut the lead down to 1, I think we would have started to see Cincinnati start to break. But that there was a difference on the night between these 2 teams. One team had strikers that could finish their chances, while the other one had chances, then they couldn't finish. And it's not like it's been the first time this season that we've seen that happen either. So, you hope the Union can get that out of their system. And I know Jim talked about, we've seen that we can score in the past, which is true, but the games where you just absolutely dominated the other team with scoring a ton of goals were against DC United and Houston, and both those games are outliers in my opinion. It's we know both of those teams are terrible, so minus those 2 games, I think the Union are in the bottom half of goals scored this season, which, do they really have players that can score goals? Minus those 2 games, you would argue they don't. And you had Jakob Glesnes and Jack Elliott, and Jose Martinez just played possibly the worst game ever for the Union. All 3 players were responsible for not tracking runners. You had Brendan Vasquez getting in beyond Jakob Glesnes way too easily. Jakob Glesnes got turned inside out multiple times. Jack Elliott stuck out a lazy foot on a challenge on Brenner, and Brenner dribbles right by him. I mean, it's just really uncharacteristic from these 2 guys. I thought Jose Martinez could have done a better job just protecting the back line by not allowing Acosta to get the best of him. But, you want to get this out of your system, and, thank goodness it didn't happen in the playoffs, and hopefully the Union can get that corrected going forward and not have any more performances like that. And you look at Daniel Gazdag, he really couldn't get going either. I mean, everybody was talking about Jose Martinez and Elliott and Glesnes on social media, but I think this was one of Daniel Gazag's worst games too, where he couldn't get going with some of his passes, his movements, and that's a huge credit to Warbedu and Moreno for the way they shut down the Union's attack. And this game, this result shouldn't be that big of a surprise, in my opinion, because Pat Noonan knows the Union. He knows Jim Curtin. And you guys have heard me sing Pat's praises so many times in the past on this podcast. He's such a tactical mastermind. And what he did in this game that really impressed me is what he did with Alvaro Barrial. There's a guy who's a winger. He's not a defensive player whatsoever. And Pat Noonan goes ahead and puts him as a wingback. And he has a complete field day against the Union, creating overloads on the left side of the field. Bizo and Bedoya couldn't keep up with him, and this was all possible because of the defensive work that Tyler Blackett, Jeff Cameron, and Moreno did on the left side of the field. They were able to cover for Barrial if he got caught out of position, if he got caught up too high on the pitch. And that's all because of the way that Pat Noonan had his team organized, and just a fantastic coaching display by Pat Noonan to take this team and find ways to cover for the weaknesses. And if the Union had to play Cincinnati in the playoffs at some point, it won't be a good matchup for the Union at all. They'll struggle against Cincinnati like they've done 2 times this season. That was Cincinnati's first win ever against the Union. And it was a complete beatdown of the first place Philadelphia Union in the Eastern Conference. But let's go ahead and talk about my keys to victory. Number 1, limit Luciano Acosta's impact. And if you guys have read the blog, all 3 of my keys were the same that they were in Chester, because this is the way that you beat Cincinnati. And the Union failed on all 3 of these keys. I said limit Luciano Acosta. He averages 30.2 touches in the attacking third per game and is 5th in touches in the area with 604. He's 2nd in MLS in short key passes and 2nd in total key passes with 64. Number 1, fail. 2 assists on the night, 5 chances created, 6 key passes. Jose Martinez cannot do anything to stop Luciano Acosta. And he made the Union pay in the second half with just terrific passing and movement on and off the ball. Number 2, limit Brandon Vasquez's impact in the air. Like I said, Brandon Vasquez had 13 goals on the season with 6 coming off headers. He's won 45% of his aerial duels, making him a pain for center backs to defend against. Right there, that's a fail too. 3 out of 5 aerials won, 1 goal. His hold-up play up on the night was excellent. And I'll break down what he did in one of the goals here in a little bit. But the Union had no answer to stop Brandon Vasquez. And whether that was on the air or on the ground, Brandon Vasquez had a great game against the Union's back line. Then number 3, I said attack their wings. They gave up 13.2 crosses per game. Get Bizo and Kai Wagner involved in this game early and often. The Union tried to get them involved early on in this game, but it wasn't successful. It was a fail on the Union's part. They were 6 for 12 on crosses completed. Wagner was 3 out of 10. And I'll talk about my 3 stars here in a minute, but what the Union needed to do to get a result against Cincinnati, they just couldn't do it. And the same thing, they couldn't do it at home in Subaru Park. And if they have to play this team in the playoffs, do you guys feel confident that the Union can find a way to finally beat Cincinnati this season? I don't. And I think part of it's because Pat Noonan knows how to beat the Union. He knows what Jim Curtin's going to do. And part of it is, this team's set up to beat a team like the Philadelphia Union. Let's go ahead and talk about my 3 stars on the night. This was extremely hard to pick when you look at how the Union played. I didn't want to pick 3 players, but because I always pick 3 players, I stuck with it. And you can definitely say that none of these players had a star performance. But number 1 on the night, I thought it was Kai Wagner. 4 chances created, 8 passes into the final third, 1 out of 12 tackles won, 1 block, 2 interceptions, 8 ball recoveries, 3 out of 4 ground duels won. So, defensively, Kai Wagner was really solid, I thought. Had a couple good passes, but the Union strikers, like we talked about, just going to finish off the chances. And because of that, that's what the difference was in this game. If the Union could have finished off their chances, then this definitely wouldn't have been a 3-1 game. Number 1, Paxton Aronson, 1 goal, 2 ball recoveries, 5 out of 6 passes completed. On the day, he looked to be the best player out there that was composed, moving off the ball. Wish we could have seen Paxton come in a little bit earlier, but Paxton started number 2. And number 3 is Olivier Bizo. 2 chances created, 4 passes into the final third, 3 out of 6 on crosses, 1 out of 2 tackles won, 1 last man tackle like we talked about, 1 block, 3 ball recoveries, and 4 out of 6 ground duels won. Yeah, Bizo played really well defensively, and it's funny too, just seeing people complain about him on social media. Like, when the Union are winning, and a lot of the Union's winning lately has come because Bizo's been starting, and people aren't complaining about Bizo. But as soon as the Union lose, yeah, let's go ahead and blame Bizo. But Bizo wasn't to blame for any of the goals given up in this game, which I don't know. I don't get why people want to blame Bizo all the time. It's like Bizo did nothing to hurt the Union in this game. If anything, he did stuff to help the Union. Cory Burke missed a great ball in by Bizo. Doesn't finish off the play. And we'll get to Cory Burke here in a little bit. But let's go ahead and break down the goals. Number 1 with Brandon Vazquez. And so this play is going to start with Wobodeau, who collects the ball in his own half and is going to go ahead and just dribble. Nobody's picking him up. Mikael Uhre is trying to press him. You can tell he's already tired 50 minutes into this game. He's not able to keep up, catch him. And Liam Flock's now going to try to go ahead and cut off this. But Wobodeau takes a good touch, takes Liam Flock completely out of this play. Mikael Uhre should have put a challenge on as soon as he cut the ball. Mikael doesn't do it. And Jose Martinez is paying attention to Wobodeau and not paying attention to Luciano Acosta at all. And so you have 3 players focusing on the ball, and Martinez and Flock and Uhre. Martinez leaves his guy in Luciano Acosta, and as soon as he steps towards the ball, he's caught out of position. And so Luciano Acosta, like he's done throughout this season, is able to take a good touch, pick his head up, and go ahead and pass this ball into Barriel. And Barriel is going to go ahead and just one-time cross this into the box. Bizo was not in the best position, but this play wasn't on Bizo whatsoever. Jack Elliott just completely loses Brandon Vazquez. And what you don't see on this play, on the broadcast, is Brandon Vazquez made a run all the way on the backside of Jack Elliott. Jack Elliott thinks that he has it covered, and then Brandon Vazquez is going to go ahead and just run towards the near post. And Jakob Glesnes got beat on that same kind of play a couple weeks ago by Gustavo Bo. And now here's Jack Elliott getting beat on the same exact play that Jakob Glesnes got beat against New England. It's concerning to see that the 2 center backs are susceptible on those kind of plays. But again, I mean, it's just a huge credit to Brandon Vazquez for his movement. We talked about his movement earlier, where his movement sets up that play. It's a great finish. Andre Blake, you can say maybe should have done a little bit of a better job to protect his near post. But the pace of that ball, the finish by Brandon Vazquez, I think it would have been very hard for Andre Blake to save that. Jack Elliott's got to do a better job being aware of where Brandon Vazquez is. The midfield, 3 players going to Wobodeau, and then Martinez leaving Acosta open. It's not good at all. The Union had a 3-on-3 at one point in this, and they lose out in the 3v3. The next goal on this play was Brenner's. And so it comes from a goal kick from Cincinnati's goalkeeper. Kai Wagner is going to go ahead and foul Alvis Powell on the header. Pushes him down, and then Cincinnati, like we've seen the Union do so many times. And where do you think Pat Noonan has got this idea to start fast, have a quick restart? It's because of the Union. And so Powell gets fouled, and Cincinnati are going to go ahead and take a quick restart. And as soon as they put the ball forward, the whole midfield for the Union, Flock, Martinez, and Bedoya, gets taken out of this play. And so you have Kai Wagner, who's jogging back late because of his challenge on Alvis Powell. You have Barvial all the way out to the left. You have Jack Elliott, who has a guy behind him. He's stepping to the ball that Cincinnati played fast. And Jack Elliott actually does a good job to get the tackle in to force a turnover. But Cincinnati get to this ball before the Union do. Jose Martinez was closer to the ball than Luciano Acosta. And Jose Martinez just jogged to the ball, puts in a weak challenge on Acosta, stays with him, and Acosta just toys with Jose Martinez. Does a little bit of a shimmy, and Jose Martinez bites on it. And as soon as that happens, as soon as he turns Jose Martinez, now Acosta's going straight towards goal. And you have Kai Wagner, who has Brandon Vasquez marked pretty well. But you have Glesnes on Brenner, and Brenner just completely beats Jakob Glesnes with speed. Jack Elliott puts in a weak challenge here, like I talked about too earlier when I was giving my thoughts, to try to stop the ball. Doesn't come close to it at all. It was just such a weak attempt. And then great ball in by Acosta and an excellent finish from Brenner. I mean, there's nothing Andre Blake could have done on that finish. It's just Jose Martinez just got beat way too easily by Acosta. Jack Elliott wins the initial ball, clears it out of there. Jose Martinez is closer to the ball than Acosta, and Acosta beats him to the ball. Jose Martinez should have lost that foot race to Acosta. And then as soon as Acosta gets the ball, he just turns Jose Martinez inside out, and now he's facing towards goal, picks his head, and sees Brennan making a run towards the near post on Jakob Glesnes and finishes to Andre's far post. I mean, just excellent play there, excellent hustle from Cincinnati. They wanted it more. That's what it comes down to. Then the third goal that Cincinnati scored with Barvial, Jack Elliott's on Brandon Vasquez here. Brandon Vasquez is holding up the ball very, very well and passes the ball to Roberto. And as soon as he does that, you had five Union players all around Brandon Vasquez. You had Kai Wagner, you had Liam Flock, you had Jose Martinez, Jack Elliott, and Jakob Glesnes. And so Roberto is going to go ahead and pick up his head. Nobody's pressing the ball. He has time. And so Biza is going to go ahead and try to close down Acosta. But what you might not see on the broadcast is Barvial is going to go ahead. And as soon as Roberto plays that ball into Acosta, Barvial makes a run off of Ale Bedoya, runs into the midfield. Ale can't keep up with him. And the player that should have stepped to Barvial is Jose Martinez, because as soon as Acosta gets the ball, Bizer's on him. Jakob Glesnes is on Brandon Vasquez. You have Jack Elliott, who's on Brenner. Both of those players look to be marked very well. Ale Bedoya is taken out of this play. Barvial's completely ahead of him, which means Jose Martinez should have stepped. And Jose Martinez doesn't step. He's just jogging. He's walking, literally walking to try to get to the ball. And you know that pass is coming. Why are you walking? Everybody else has their guys covered, but Jose Martinez just walks. It's like, show some ambition, show some hustle. And he didn't show that at all in this game. So Jakob Glesnes now has to try to step to the ball. He's not going to get to it in time. And Barvial then has Jack Elliott step to him, and he makes Jack Elliott. I mean, it's avoidable goals. All three of the goals were unavoidable. But, players weren't tracking their runners. They were getting turned inside out. I mean, just totally uncharacteristic from the Union, like I've been saying throughout this podcast. And then you have the Paxton Aronson goal. It's a poor giveaway from Nelson. Good hustle by Daniel Gazag to win this ball back. Passes it to Paxton Aronson. Paxton does well to keep the ball alive. Sees Cory Burke. Cory Burke does a decent job to pass the ball back to Paxton. I don't think Cory Burke meant to do this whatsoever. I think Cincinnati did a good job marking him, and he panics and gets rid of the ball. Luckily, Paxton's able to move to the ball and gets a lucky deflection, and the Union get a goal. But the play started there from a poor giveaway from Nelson. Daniel Gazag presses. Paxton presses. Cory Burke gets an assist that, in my opinion, he didn't deserve. But Regardless, Cory Burke gets an assist, and there you have it for the goal breakdowns. And let's go ahead and talk about Blunder of the Week. And Blunder of the Week, like I said, stay for the Cory Burke talk. And Blunder of the Week is going to Cory Burke for being completely insecure. He had somebody on social media, on Instagram, I don't know if you guys saw this, if you guys follow him, but he had somebody make him a highlights video. And he puts the caption as, just a friendly reminder with the shh emoji. I mean, really? How insecure do you have to be to go ahead after you just had a stinker of a game? You have somebody go and make a highlights video of you showing you scoring goals, all your best plays. But here's the thing, right? All of his highlights were from the 2017, 18, and 19 season. You know, the leagues got a lot better compared to those years where you were in your prime, where you were at your best. And what does that tell you about yourself, where you have to get highlights from seasons prior, not what you've done in the present, what you've done last year or this year? What's that tell you about yourself? That tells me you haven't been as good as you were in your first years coming up in MLS with the Bethlehem Steel. He's obviously seeing the criticism from fans on social media. And to go out of your way and have somebody make a highlight video of you, that tells me you can't take the criticism that fans are giving you on social media. Because yes, fans have been complaining about Cory Burke a ton this season. You guys know I've complained about Cory Burke a lot this season. He's been the Union's worst player this season. But how are you going to go ahead and post this video after you had a complete terrible game? You've not done anything that has been worthy, in my opinion. You've been playing so bad this season where you get dropped by the Jamaican national team, where they struggle to have good strikers. But Jamaica's saying, you've been so bad, we don't even want you in the national team. Like, what does that say about yourself? I mean, you were extremely insecure to post this video to tell fans to just a friendly reminder, look what I've done. Yeah, this is what you've done in the past, but you haven't done anything recently. Your goals that you've got have been extremely lucky. They've been deflections. The assists you got, extremely lucky. You know, you want to respond to criticism, work harder. Don't show what you've done in the past. None of that matters. Show what you're capable of doing this season, now. You know, Cory Burke, I mean, we know he makes a ton of mistakes. He offers nothing to this team. He'll press for 10, 15 minutes at most, and then he's not interested at all. He gets in his teammates' way. I mean, there was one point in this game where Jack McGlynn saw Cory Burke open, and Jack McGlynn decides, yeah, that's not my best option to pass the ball to Cory Burke. I'm going to go ahead and take the shot myself. I mean, what does that tell you about his teammates trusting him on the field? They do not trust Cory Burke whatsoever. But it's so sad where you know Jim's first sub of the game is always going to be Cory Burke. And I saw Rich Laurie said on Twitter, he's like, this is why I wanted another striker before the transfer window ended. And he does have a point, right? I know Ernst was never going to do it because they brought in 4 strikers this season in Uwa Carranza, Donovan, and Jose Riasco. But once you take off Mikel Uwa and Julian Carranza, what do you have striker-wise, players that can make a difference when you're down? You don't have anybody on that bench that's a striker that can make a difference. The only player that you had was Sergio Santos, which we all know, injury-prone, and the Union traded him away. But at least I felt more confidence with Sergio Santos coming off the bench making a difference than when Cory Burke comes onto this field. And so, yeah, Blunder of the Week's going to Cory Burke. Like, I absolutely hate dogging on players. But when you're that insecure, when you can't take the criticism, you know you're getting criticized. And so you have somebody go out here and make this highlight video of you, and the highlights aren't even relevant to what you've done now. I mean, come on, man. What's that say about you? But if you guys have been enjoying the podcast, if you guys enjoyed this episode, all that stuff, go ahead and follow on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at FreeKickPod. Check out the website, thefreekick.net. And hopefully sometime this week, I can get a commentator trying to get Tyler Terrens on the podcast to talk about the Chicago Fire game. It's always a great time when Tyler can join the podcast, so hopefully we can get something situated for you guys for a preview episode, because definitely want to talk about Casper's huge game over the weekend against Charlotte, where he scored 2 goals. Shaqiri seems like he's coming into fine form, finally getting used to MLS, and I don't know, could Chicago Fire potentially upset the Union this Saturday? It's possible. The Union do typically play down to their opponent, so really hoping we can talk about that game. But if not, then I'll do my best to try to go back-to-back weeks to write a match preview on the website. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.